And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. I am excited, happy, thirsty, hot. Got a very special program today. Those vinyl heads who've been looking forward to what I've got to say are going to be very, very happy. Not because I'm going to be saying it, but because I got a very special guest in the studio. Nelson's got the week off, so I'm going to set the stage today. Then I'm going to bring in my guest. Vinyl records, also known as a phonograph or phonographic records, sometimes simply referred to as vinyl, have a rich history. You know they were first introduced several hundred years ago, and here's a brief overview for you. Emil Berliner patented the gramophone in 1887, which used flat disc made of hard rubber for playback. This marked the birth of the disc-based phonograph, what we think of as records. Then turned to the 20th century with that of the shellac era. In the early 20th century, shellac became the standard material for records. These 78 RPM, known as revolutions per minute records, were brittle but popular for decades on. Then the vinyl era. In the 1940s and 50s, in particular, vinyl records made of polyvinyl chloride, PVC, the same stuff you see running underneath your house and in your walls, started to replace shellac. These 33 1/3 RPMs, also known as LPs or long playing records, and 45s, 45 RPM singles, provided longer playing times and allegedly better sound quality. Then you have the golden age, the age that most of our listeners remember. Vinyl records reached their high point in the 1960s and 70s. Rock is almost synonymous with vinyl. Artists released iconic albums on LPs, long plays, and record players were a staple in most households worldwide. Then turn to the late 1980s into the 1990s. Vinyl's popularity began to wane. We saw a meteoric rise of a new format, the CD or compact disc. Proponents of which claimed that compact discs would be far superior, give much higher fidelity, scratch-proof, and would make better copies. Many music stores phased out their vinyl sections altogether. Finally, the early 21st century has seen and continues to see a resurgence of vinyl. Audiophiles and collectors alike have embraced the format's warmth, claiming the music makes them feel more visceral, emotional, and nostalgic. This resurgence is unlike anything ever seen before. There are so many vinyls being stamped today that literally the industry can't keep up. Just in 2022 alone, about 16 million new vinyls were sold, which is about the same number as were sold during its heyday in the 60s. Vinyl records continue to be cherished by enthusiasts and collectors alike, now coexisting with other digital formats in the music industry. But you don't need to hear me go on and on about the history of vinyl. Today I have the great pleasure of interviewing a vinyl record lover who also happens to be a friend and a colleague, a history professor, a polyglot, a dad, and even a PhD candidate at Constantine the Philosopher University in Nitra. Mr. Ben Sorensen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, what is up, my man? It's a pleasure to be here today. And I love talking about vinyl. It's honestly what started me in my journey as a historian as well as an ethnologist or cultural anthropologist.
How so?
Well, whenever you're a little kid, right? Yeah. And your parents used to break out, the records and they'd put them on the record player. Do you remember that hook arm that would hold one up and then it'd finish and the arm
would reach out and grab it, yeah.
And then that other record would drop and then it'd come back and it was like a changer. Well, okay, so my parents didn't really listen to their music collection as much, but I was fascinated from a young age with music. I even would go to the local library and borrow vinyl. Yes, that used to be a thing. You could go to the local public library and borrow vinyl. I discovered Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath that way.
Nice. Well, I was going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your childhood experience with vinyl, so you beat me to it. Any other anecdotes you want to share about the connection potentially between vinyl and any of your more recent endeavors, including but not limited to your marriage to someone from another country, your travels throughout Europe, your pursuit of this PhD in, I guess, ethnology?
Right. Yeah, well, ethnology and history at the same time.
Yeah.
But what's rather amazing, right? So whenever I was a little kid,
Yeah.
and I was listening to vinyl, I was listening to like the Beatles' White Album,
Yeah.
or I'd throw on Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. Some things my parents didn't listen to. I also threw on country. You know? So from a very young age, I was exposing myself by going to the local library as well as picking through their collection to many different genres of music, everything from classical all the way over to, well, at the time, what they would have considered like heavy metal.
Right.
Wasn't quite Metallica yet, you know. But I mean, so even with that, as I got older, I would very often pull out different records and borrow them. Like I discovered Joy Division by borrowing one from the local library. They happened to have, I want to say it was Closer. In fact, today I brought a copy of Closer that's actually a very rare copy. If you take a very close look at it, it's with the original white sleeve, and the record itself is clear.
Nice.
So, you know, the things they've really advanced. Now, as far as using the records for, you know, my background as an ethnologist, one thing I should also point out, I also have a degree in music.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. I kind of try to hide it, you know. It's better to be poor once as a historian rather than poor twice as a musician and historian. Yeah.
I understand.
So, you know, there's no money to be made in either. But so unless you're, I guess, Taylor Swift.
Yeah, number one vinyl selling artist currently.
Oh,
one in every
my
20
goodness.
one in every 20 pieces of vinyl stamped and sold, I understand, is Taylor Swift.
Seriously.
Unbelievable.
Wow. Do you know which one it happens to be? Is it like Evermore?
I
or
don't.
Is it 1989?
I don't.
Oh. Well, as you can tell, okay, so I just outed myself there. I am also somewhat of a Swiftie.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah.
So you haven't made it to one of her concerts yet. The Eras Tour, you hadn't made that, have you?
I tried to get a ticket. And yeah, I was one of those people that got blocked
Well,
out.
it's hard. You know, you got to decide. Am I going to pay the mortgage this month or am I going to buy a ticket? Well,
for Swift?
I'm going to press you a
For
little bit.
Tay-Tay?
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to the concert.
So obviously your upbringing, being able to go to the library, I'm sure you had friends that listened to vinyl, so you guys could swap and share ideas. But I've heard you talk about some American artists, and yes, while America has been a hotbed for vinyl, and to this day still is, more vinyl sold to Americans than by far anywhere else in the world. I noticed that you've handed me a couple of things that look foreign, to say the least, including one that I recognize, but when I turn it over, I don't recognize any of the writing. So this is a Black Sabbath one I'm holding, ladies and gentlemen. You can't see this, but on the back it says Sneakadam, or something like that.
That is actually in Azbuka, it's Russian, but the writing is Cyrillic or Azbuka, as you would say in
Cyrillic,
Russian.
yeah, that's what it looks
so
like. It looks like a font that I recognize, Cyrillic.
Right. Yeah, it is Cyrillic. Those are all different songs that came out on, let me see, I can tell you which albums these would have come off of. Probably the first, as well as, oh boy. And it's a little dark in the studio, everyone. Give me just a second. So, yeah, Black Sabbath, NIB, Planet Caravan. Okay, so yeah, this is off the first two albums. So this would have been printed, I'm looking for a year. I'll find one. 1970.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this particular one was printed for the Soviet Socialist Republic, the USSR, as well as satellite states. It had actually cleared the censors, that one, and those are all original Black Sabbath. A lot of people seem to think that anything from the West wasn't coming in to Soviet states or communist states.
But it was.
Yeah, it was. And it passed through the censors and it got there. Even to the point where many artists, say in the Czech Republic, they would take American songs and rewrite the words and put it in Czech or put it in Slovak. And so Americans can go there all the time and hear a song. They're like, oh, I know this, but the words are completely different. For example, Uriah Heep, Lady in Black, is also a very famous Czech song. Or Soldier of Fortune. Who did that one? Oh, it'll come to me. It will come to me. Ian Gillian and Deep Purple, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, so Deep Purple. They also redid that song, Lady in Black, and they did it in Czech.
Now, it's my understanding that with this resurgence of vinyl, the people who stamp these records, these companies can't keep up. And I have heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that some of the Soviet era printing presses have been retrofitted, cranked back up, leased out or sold to, I guess, the Swiss, whoever's selling all this vinyl now. I think it's the Swiss.
And that's where it gets interesting, right? So if you're collecting vinyl, okay, so I should make a little comment about why vinyl is important.
Sure, yeah.
So first off, vinyl, there's a lot of things that haven't been digitized. And I brought a couple of examples. Like there is a Panorama box set. That is actually an ethnomusicological collection of Slovak folk music.
So can't get that on CD or MP3. Okay.
No, I made an MP3 from that box set.
Sure.
Yeah. That thing is hard to find. I also brought, I want to say, if you check the back of it, it should be Joe Glazer. It should be in English, the songs of the IWW. That one should be coming from, let's see, is this one... Collector Records. Okay, no, this one is before actually the Smithsonian got a hold of it. So yeah, this was released one last time by the Smithsonian, but this one is from Collector Records, and these are work songs of the Wobblies or the IWW, the Singing Fighting Union, and Joe Glazer was one of their best interpreters of those songs. That I'm not sure has been put digitally out there,
but if it has, it's relatively recently. Yeah,
right. There may be a CD, but that was through the Smithsonian. I'm not sure that anything on it is from that is even in press right now. So some, to be able to document the history of some music and as well as cultures,
right,
you have to sometimes just go back to the vinyl. As an ethnologist, as a cultural anthropologist, especially one who loves music. Very often I'm looking for a CD or an MP3, and whenever I find the MP3, it's coming off somebody's vinyl.
Right.
And it's not out
or it just
there
doesn't exist at all, right?
Right. It doesn't exist at all unless it's on vinyl.
So you can't buy it from iTunes or...
Exactly. And let's face it, in the late 1800s, once Emil Berliner had created the gramophone, which was the first thing where you could not only record, but play it back. Right? I mean, there was, the audio gramophone before then? Can't remember the inventor's name.
Edison,
I'm sure
maybe Thomas Edison.
No, it was before Edison.
Okay.
This guy used to use lamp black, which is basically black carbon black,
wow,
thrown on paper.
This is the paper thing you were telling me about before.
And whenever they would record it, it would just make a line, and it was this idea of being able to visually study music.
Wow.
However, they didn't know if they could get it to play back. We have gotten the first one to play back, and it's a 15-year-old girl singing what we think is Claire de Lune.
Wow.
Yeah, it's freaky sounding. I'm sure we can find it.
So there's importance. There's for academic reasons, right?
Right.
But also for like just good old fashioned historical archival reasons, right? Anthropological reasons.
Right now, we can't find any recordings of Franz Liszt, but if there is one, it's going to be on. It's going to be on a cylinder disc, on a wax disc, or vinyl, or shellac, right? Some of the greatest blues musicians that we ever had, they were recorded, believe it or not, on Paramount Records, which was a record company created by a furniture company that went out and recorded people like Son House and a lot of other Blind Lemon. They recorded some of the best blues artists of the day because they were making turntables and they wanted to have a record to sell with the turntable as furniture. Now, a lot of those shellac and 78s that they made and some of the late vinyls from the 30s, they've ended up at the bottom of a river. They're totally destroyed. So if you find a Paramount Blues album, it is increasingly important for thousands of reasons. One of them is American history, right? So, and also if we go back to like the late 1800s, like I was saying, if we go back there, Bela Bartok, who was a great pianist, great composer, died in 1945. But in the late 1800s, he was born in Hungary. He was recording different types of folk songs and music from little villages all the way from Romania through Slovakia into to modern day Czech Republic, modern Slovakia. This was all Austria, Hungary, and also into Romania. He was working as one of the first ethnomusicologists, and then he would compose his own music based on what he had heard there, much like Franz Liszt. What's really crazy is he's born 5 years before Franz Liszt dies, and there is a recording of Bartók playing Franz Liszt, which is how he got famous in the first place as one of the greatest interpreters of one of the greatest pianists of all time.
Wow.
And I know of one.
That'd make Kanye West jealous.
But Kanye West should probably be jealous of a lot. But
So for our audience's listening pleasure, is there any evidence of spoken word being recorded?
Oh my, yes, all the time. First off, if you're a punk, right? You've got Henry Rollins.
Yeah.
I mean, Family Man by Black Flag. That entire album is basically spoken word. Yeah. And that really was, one of those avant-garde punk ideas, which really reached back to the 70s in England. There was also a punk poet then, but we don't have to get into all that. But yeah, there are records of those. But again, spoken word, one of the most important pieces that has ever been recorded in American history was Margaret Mead and James Baldwin doing Rap on Race. They were talking about race relations, and I cannot find it anywhere, just on vinyl, and the vinyl itself, impossible to find right now. So if I ever come across it, I'm going to be thrilled to pick it up.
So ask you a couple of things that are not academic.
Sweet.
What is the strangest thing you've ever done to or with a piece of vinyl?
Okay, so whenever I was a little kid, I think everybody remembers the first time they heard Run DMC.
Yes.
And Jam Master Jay.
Yes.
Okay, who didn't try that with like your Victrola record flavor?
You did pull a record out or two.
Oh my God.
And try to give it a turn, a scratch, a quick.
So much so that I had like white powder on the disc by the end of it. It was like,
and did you literally scratch it up?
Yes, I did. I had to go out and get, other copies before my parents caught me.
Okay. Yeah.
Back then, though, you could just run, to a record store. There were record stores that were selling new records, right?
I imagine 99% of the people who have had vinyl and a turntable would have tried that. My understanding, by the way, is only about 1 in 4 vinyl listeners own a turntable today, which is strange. Not sure where they're listening to their vinyl. Maybe at a friend's house or in a music store or at a club.
I would almost consider that they would be collecting the vinyl, and then, but listening to everything on iTunes or Spotify.
Yeah. My friend Phil McCaskey has done that. He's digitized his entire 20,000 strong vinyl record collection.
Right.
And he's basically converted it so that you still kind of sort of get that same sound, that warmth. He's a DJ, but he has it at his convenience at the tip of his fingers in the computer.
Right. Well, he's probably thinking he's getting the warmth, but the truth is,
it's just
the moment you put it over to MP3, you lose some of the fidelity.
You lose something.
One thing about records is the way that they are, the way the EQ is set up, the way they're mastered is different than anything else.
Well, I was going to say, isn't it also true, at least it feels that way when I'm touching a piece of vinyl, right? Or I'm rubbing my lips. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I've actually tasted vinyl before. I remember as a kid putting my tongue, my lips on it. I remember thinking, I wonder if there's a way for me to learn this album or this record in such a way that I could recognize it with my eyes closed, recognize it without even hearing it, but instead by touching it with my fingers or touching it with my lips. And I would just say that, the grooves that are literally physically cut into a piece of vinyl, a vinyl record, gives you an opportunity for a haptic or a somatosensory, a tactile experience while you're listening, right? Some people say that listening to vinyl is organic or even multisensorial. I think that's what they mean,
right? I mean, if you look at if we look at any of the records I brought in, except for maybe the Soviet, that one a little boring. But Malchat Doma, which is probably the one that you can't really read. Oh, well, I was thinking the sleeve, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at the sleeve on the Wobblies, you've got. I mean, it's a work of art. It's absolutely a work of art. Then you have to remove the disc from that work of art physically set it down, and then physically clean it. You should always clean your records before you play them,
And
with
after.
with the brush, usually like an anti-static brush. Then you drop the needle and you listen to this, and it's a total immersive experience. And if you're listening to a 33 and a half, right? I mean, you get what, maybe 28 to 35 minutes on one side, and you have to flip it, usually shorter, which, by the way, is why a lot of albums before were so short by our standards today. They had to fit it on the LP, and today we buy like multi album, like the albums that are 2 or 3 records long now.
Now, what does EP and LP really mean? I know it's extended play and long play, but what does that mean exactly?
The extended play was shorter than the long play. The long play was the full album. The extended play was kind of
Longer than a single.
Much longer than a single. But the catch was that the single, the 45, came in 2 sizes. It came in a 12-inch and a 7-inch.
Yeah.
The 7-inch is the one that everybody thinks of as a single. The fidelity on that isn't as good as if it were on a 12-inch. And a lot of bands like Deep Purple just put out an album. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's like one of their later albums that just came out. I want to say in 2018. It is two records, and it's at 45 and on 12-inch records.
Nice.
But the fidelity of it is amazing.
Yes.
Rammstein, with their latest
the German
Zeit.
band.
Yeah, with their last album, Zeit, they did the same thing.
Well, I'm going to take a break, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, we got way more with our guest.
Sweet.
And we're back talking to our guest, friend and colleague Ben Sorensen, about vinyl. He's given us a nice little historical tour of vinyl and talked about vinyl from an academic/intellectual perspective. But during the break, we went out to my fridge and grabbed a couple of Belgian Flemish sours.
Sweet.
Little shout out to the country of Belgium for making the best sour beer on the planet. I'm drinking a Monk's Cafe Flemish Sour Ale. Ben, you've got a
Rodenbach Alexander.
Yeah, Rodenbach Alexander. My brother Andy, if he listens to this, is going to be very, very jealous. I think that's our number 2 or 3 on our favorite beer of all time list. Any rate, I want to talk a little bit, turn the tables a little bit on you, and talk a little personal anecdote about vinyl. Any stories, any memories, any connections that you have to old friends or...
Oh my God! I don't even know where to begin.
What does vinyl do for you?
I don't even know where to begin because so I'm a musician as well.
Yeah.
And when I was learning how to play guitar, I remember playing like Led Zeppelin albums and lifting the needle, lifting the arm, and trying it on the guitar, then putting the arm back down, and listening to it, lift the needle, try to repeat what I heard. This was
so vinyl
my
was
childhood.
a music teacher.
Oh, always. Some people use cassette tapes, but I mean that was a little bit later, right?
Yeah.
That was in the 80s, late 80s. I went to cassettes because they were cheap.
Yeah.
And I think that's why vinyl probably started to fade, supposedly. Right. But as we can tell, its death was greatly exaggerated.
Of course.
But yeah, I'm sure a lot of people were doing the same thing. Placing the needle down, listening to a little short excerpt, and then you lift it and you try to repeat it on the guitar or the bass or whatever you were doing, as well as singing. Tried to repeat what I was hearing. Battle of Evermore, that one drove me nuts. I never got it down right because it was just too much happening. Learning how to play Rolling Stone songs,
Right.
Not realizing that Keith Richards was in a different tuning than I was. That, thankfully for the internet, that once I found that he was using alternate tunings, it made a world of difference in learning how to play his stuff. But yeah, I learned how to play it on a standard tuned guitar because I was listening to things like Gimme Shelter on vinyl, right? So some other memories from vinyl, I remember discovering bands by, trading vinyl with friends or bringing, say, Kiss home.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And also, even today, I use vinyl to remember really good friends, especially in Slovakia. So in Slovakia, I also play fujara, piszczalka. These are shepherd's flutes, and they are traditional instruments of that country and the native music, if you will, the traditional music. And a lot of my friends, many of them have passed on. And one of my best friends, Dusan Hodik, he passed away. But I do have recordings of them as well as their family on vinyl.
Nice.
You know, one of my friends, Dusan Kliment, I've got his uncle, I believe, on vinyl. And you can't get that on MP3 or anywhere else. No. It's only on vinyl. So I find these. A friend of mine that I had met once or twice, Josef Peszko, he was also a great fujara player, and I've got his album on vinyl.
Nice.
You know, so I throw these on, and it's probably a little different.
Yeah.
As I'm
takes you
listening
back,
to
right?
friends, right? Like I actually knew these guys.
Yeah.
And
Talk a little bit more about that visceral experience that we hear people sort of hearken to whenever they're being nostalgic about vinyl. What does that mean to you when you hear vinyl being visceral or vinyl being organic or sensorial?
You know,
Describe that for yourself at least.
Okay, so I mean, one of my best friends in Slovakia is a guy named Josef Zahradnik, and we call him Chansey. He has one of the largest record collections in Slovakia, over 4,000 records.
Wow.
Yeah. And I try to get him vinyl. He tries to get me vinyl. You know, we're always like, did you find this one? I didn't find that. Did you find Rush? This one? No, I didn't find it, but I found this. Do you like, you know? But for both of us, right? I have to answer it for both of us. That visceral, that tangible moment of grabbing a record. What makes it so special? Well, let's go to Led Zeppelin 4, right?
Okay.
So have you ever seen it on vinyl? I unfortunately didn't bring mine. Okay, so if you look at the very front, there's an old man and a painting on this peeling paint wall, right? It looks like a peeling paint stucco wall. Very normal for Europe. Most walls are built with cinder block and then stuccoed, and you know, as they get old, they peel and kind of scrape that off with a paint scraper, and you know, paint over it again. This one looks like it's been neglected, but there is a painting of an old man with a bundle of sticks on his back, and he's got a cane. Now, when you open it, that wall then kind of breaks away, and you see a very modern cityscape.
Oh, wow.
Where the songs are listed. So if you open it on one hand, on one side, the normal side that you would have seen whenever you bought this, you have this panorama of like old versus new, right?
Nice.
Then you flip it over, and it's from the tarot. It's the Hermit from the tarot. And it's brilliantly painted. So if you can imagine...
So before you've ever pulled the piece of vinyl out,
right,
before you put the needle on the record,
you're already in this experience,
there,
right? Yeah. Led Zeppelin 3, for example, the very front page looks like a very strange collage. But to make it even crazier is, okay, if you buy it on tape or on CD, you look at it and it's like, I wonder what they were thinking.
Yeah.
You get it on vinyl, like the original vinyl. Some of them aren't done this way. I don't know if the reprints were, but the original, you had a pinwheel on this that you could spin, and it changed the album cover as you spun it, because there were little holes, and that pinwheel inside, right? As you turn it, there were new pictures coming through the opening. So, you know, already you're in the middle of this visceral experiment, this visual encapsulation of what the album may or may not be about, right?
Yeah.
Physical Graffiti, another one by Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, they were kind of like the Tool of their era. Tool has always come up with great ways to package their CDs.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, yeah. One of them, they had a stereograph where you could look through 3D images by lifting up one side of the CD, the cover on the CD, and then on the other hand, the other side, you had this like flipping stereograph.
Right.
It was almost like one
and
of those
a lot of that
Viewmasters.
is a lot easier now with computer art, right? But these guys back in the day who were doing it with vinyl, who were doing it with vinyl covers, I mean, they were using printing presses, paint,
Exactly.
screen
So, like,
printing, whatever.
Right. So like physical graffiti.
Yeah.
When you pull the records out of this, and it's a top loaded sleeve,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is really wild. It looks like buildings, but you pull out the record and you could flip the records around the sleeves, and the windows would have different scenes. So you could change the scenes through the windows by how you flip it.
Oh, cool.
And then there's this piece of paper that you could stick in, and it would spell physical graffiti in the
Nice.
windows, right?
Nice.
Yeah. So, they were experimenting with it in through the outdoor, had 4 different covers. You didn't know which one you were getting because when you bought it, it just said in through the outdoor, and it was in a like a paper bag.
Right.
Most people toss the paper bag. If you can find it with the paper bag, it's probably worth a lot of money.
Sure.
You didn't know which version of that album you were going to get. I think it had 4 different covers. And also, from what I understand, I haven't tried it. I have one of the originals, but supposedly you could take the sleeve that you pulled the record out of, and that paper sleeve, it is a thicker paper, but it's almost like, if you remember those watercolor paints,
Yeah.
And supposedly you could take like a wet sponge and and it would colorize
Oh,
that
wow.
thing. I've never tried it on
Well,
mine.
speaking of colors, I noticed that some albums, most of them are black vinyl, but I've seen some of them are yellow, red, blue. What's going on with that?
Oh, well, I mean, we've gotten better, right? But there was a time whenever doing picture discs where you had like the picture, like one of the famous ones is Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Right.
They've always done that as a picture disc. I mean, it came out on black vinyl, but you can find the picture disc where it's the record with that picture of him reclining.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is it true that the black
doesn't always
vinyl
sound as good.
collects less dust, or maybe you can see the dust better on them, so you can wipe them cleaner? Is that possible?
It's hard to say because normally whenever I look at them, I don't see the dust until I run the brush. And then
I just assumed maybe it had to do with why so many of them are black is because you could see the dust on black.
I have heard many people say that the black vinyl definitely has better fidelity,
But you need to
than the
clean
picture
them
disc.
no matter what, right? I mean, you obviously need.
Yeah, but the truth is that I've got many different colored albums. Walmart, of all the places, is doing a great job of re-releasing or releasing their own versions of albums, but on like
Different
clear
colored albums,
vinyl, red vinyl.
Nice.
Kill 'Em All by Metallica is on red.
Nice.
Master of Puppets is on brick red.
Oh wow.
And Justice for All, which is all about money, is on green vinyl.
Nice.
So sometimes their choices are kind of like, what are you thinking? And other times it's like, okay, I see it. Some of the visceral moments, that for that colored vinyl, right? Pulling this out and seeing what it looks like. I'm not sure which Molchat Doma I brought. It's the one with the hotel on the front. I don't know if I brought the egg splattered vinyl or is it just the Coke? That's the clear. Yeah, the clear Coke colored vinyl.
Yeah, and if, ladies and gentlemen, if I can describe it to you, it's so clear that I can see completely through it. You can see the little grooves in the vinyl very well, but I can see right through them into my computer, so I could read my computer screen right through the entire album.
It's really
just beautiful.
cool.
Yeah. But admittedly, it looks completely clean. Of course, it won't be after I put my grimy hands on it. But yeah,
I'll wash it. But there's so many, right? Now, there was an artist that I always say like saved my life, and that was Leonard Cohen. And I haven't found many albums of his on different colored vinyl.
Wow.
But the last album, to Posthumous, Thanks for This Dance. Thanks for the Dance.
It came out on another
It came
color.
out on white.
Wow.
As well as black, but it came out also a version on white.
And you'd seen nothing before that.
I had never seen anything colored with Leonard Cohen before that.
Well, Leonard Cohen I guess they wanted to let his writing speak for itself.
Always. Yeah. He was the
No
great
bells and
writer.
whistles.
Yeah. Except if you look at the covers, again, they're works of art.
Yeah.
Of New Skin for the Old Ceremony as a depiction of 2 cherubims flying while copulating over a river. Yeah. And it comes from a book of alchemy, I want to say from 1623.
Wow. So these
It's
covers
gorgeous.
told a pretty seriously deep story.
Oh, every
Almost
time.
always, yeah.
Yeah, it with the old albums, right? Yeah. Then you get some modern that I don't know. Now, I will have to say for anybody that was coming out of Motown or R&B, like from like 72 to 80,
Right.
if they showed up reclining, you knew that album was going to kick ass.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, like Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah.
You know,
Reclining.
Luther Vandross. Reclining. There were times when Prince, you know, with his shirt off, it was like, what's this? You knew that album was going to kick ass.
I was also thinking about Lionel Richie.
Oh, yeah. Reclining. Yeah.
Definitely. Funny. Tell us about the B-sides. What do you know about B-sides? I mean, were B-sides originally intended to suck so badly? Why do we stereotype? Is there any truth to the stereotype that the B-sides are going to suck?
The B-side was supposed to be filler. Okay. So there was a time when, and it really depended on the band, right? I mean, you wouldn't find Black Sabbath writing a throwaway song.
No. In fact, with the best artists, you always think, well, that would be one of the limitations, right? Is that you couldn't put all of the songs on the front side because even as a long play, right, there wouldn't be enough physical room to press out all of those songs. So you'd need that second side.
Right.
Of course, I also know that some artists would put out
but that wouldn't really be on the album, the B-side. That idea of the B-side doesn't come from the album itself. It comes from the single.
Oh, only from the single. Okay.
Really?
All right.
Your A-side was, you know, your hit. And then there's the B-side. And that was kind of like the throwaway. Oh, we can't waste this vinyl. But here's something else off the album. You know?
Right. Can you think of any B-sides that ever became more popular than the A-side?
In America?
Or just as popular?
Oh, my gosh. I'm sure that there's a bunch that I could think of. Let's have some fun with that, right? Okay, so you've got, you know, Queen.
Sure.
All right, you know. And We Are the Champions is the A side on that single. Of course, the B side was, take a guess.
We Will Rock You?
Yeah.
Nice. So that was definitely as popular, if not more, wasn't it?
Right. However, I would argue that the way they put it on News for the World, or I think it was News for the World, the way they put it on there, where it just immediately goes from We Will Rock You right into We Are the Champions.
Yeah.
That's how everybody wants to hear it.
Yeah, not flipping the record over.
Right, don't flip it over. You want it to happen like immediately. Yeah. And I don't know.
So on the extended album, the full album, they put them together.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they did. It really worked well. I'm sure the Rolling Stones, Honky Tonk Woman.
Sure.
I think that was a B-side.
Okay.
Not positive, but I think it was the B-side.
Right.
Beatles,
yeah.
Beatles, I know Revolution was a B-side to Hey Jude.
Okay.
So, you know, that's hard to say which one's more popular.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, again, you're talking about the Beatles. Did they ever write anything that they were like, okay, we're just throwing that away?
Right.
They wrote things that they were like, okay, we're throwing that out.
Yeah.
But never
it makes
away.
sense. I mean, if Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, Prince, think of those kinds of songwriting greats.
Right.
Chances are they're going to be just as popular on the B side as the A side after some time.
Right.
I think about Elvis Presley.
However, if we go, this is going into the 90s, Primitive Radio Gods. I'm not sure what the B side was, but the A side was. Have you heard this? Since the day we met.
Nice. Okay, yeah, I remember the song, but admittedly, I didn't remember the name of the band, Primitive Radio Gods.
Right. Well, the rest of the album sucked.
You know, it's funny, back when there were a lot of one-hit wonders, you remembered the song, you remember the chorus, the hooks, but you never remembered the artist.
Right.
Today, we know artists, but we don't necessarily know their song titles. Like I know Taylor Swift.
Oh, of course.
But I can't tell you any of her song titles. I can probably sing along with a few songs, but
Blank
the titles
Spaces?
themselves, no.
I mean, oh, come on. You should know
remember.
Blank
No.
Spaces. You should know Blank Spaces.
I probably should, but I don't.
I'll write your name.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So what are we missing?
I'm not sure. So where are we heading with this?
Well, no, I just wanted to bring my audience a sort of nostalgic experience surrounding someone's love of vinyl.
Oh, absolutely.
Someone as old, if not older than me, who could talk about this intelligently, but at the same time talk about it in kind of a passionate way. I wanted to make sure my guest had some real experience with vinyl. I wanted to make sure it was part of their own personal history. I guess the thing we haven't talked about is maybe why vinyl went away in the first place, and more importantly, what's maybe the impetus for its resurgence. So if you would, start a little bit, if you would.
Sure.
Just remind the audience who maybe are too young to even know that vinyl actually was a big thing until what, about 1980? 1990?
No, I would probably say about 1995.
Okay. And then what happened?
Well, okay, so about 1987, right? I mean, you end up with cassettes, and the cassettes were what, $7.99?
So a lot cheaper.
$10 at most. They were a whole lot cheaper.
A lot easier to make copies of.
Oh,
you got the
yes.
boombox with the 2 cassettes on it.
And who didn't have the boombox with the 2 decks on there, right? It always came with a record button. The moment that you panicked was whenever you had the bot one and you put it in the wrong one and the record button went down because somebody put tape on it.
Yes.
That would get you into some heartbreak. That was beginning to push to kill vinyl, but just pure economics, the cost, right? Also the advent of CDs, which, I mean, CDs had been around since, I want to say the first one to be printed, the technology was 1950.
Right. But I'm assuming the player was so expensive then that
it was military.
Right,
it was actually a military invention.
Yeah.
But by 1990, it had become this standard, really, by 1989, right? I mean,
they were cheap, right? You could get a CD player, a five
like
disc
before
changer.
You were buying, Theater of Pain by Motley Crue, a huge, beautiful album with good songs. Some of them were amazing,
right?
Some of them not so much because it was Motley Crue. But the album itself looked amazing. Too Fast for Love on vinyl looked amazing,
right?
By the time Dr. Feelgood came around, you got it on a cassette, you had it on a CD, and you had it on vinyl. And the CD and the vinyl, well, they were about the same cost, but the CD was smaller. You could put more in your bedroom, right? So people really jumped to CD. Plus,
put them in your car as well.
Exactly, that was coming, right? With the Discman,
that was coming.
Yeah, with the Discman and the tape adapter. Yeah. So even if you didn't have the disc player in your car, which skipped, at first, and then they figured out ESP, which was like this forward read on the CD,
right?
So it wouldn't skip as you were driving. You could still listen to a CD if you had a tape deck, with that adapter.
Green Day was my first, by the way, using that tape deck adapter in the portable CD player.
Oh, Green Day? You admit to that?
Green Day, yeah.
Oh, no.
I was driving a really crappy Honda station wagon. 4-speed, I think.
Wow, yeah.
Not good.
Yeah, turn on the radio, the lights turn off.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Turn on the lights, the radio turns off. Yeah. Turn on both, the car doesn't start.
Do you remember the first piece of vinyl you ever bought?
Oh, the first piece of vinyl I ever bought. Probably a Led Zeppelin album. I fell in love with Jimmy Page's style, right? On guitar. It was so much fun to try to emulate. The coolest one I ever bought was when Vitology from Pearl Jam came out.
Oh, wow.
And I found Spin the Black Circle on a 45. which that song is all about playing records. So to have a single of Spin the Black Circle on a 45 on record, to me, it was just, this is classic, you know?
Nice.
So, and my friends thought it was really cool too. However, at that time, I didn't have a record player. The old one had died, but I bought it just because of, you know, what it meant, right?
Really?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some, you know, with the death of records, you know, the CD and the tape deck, it really killed it. And then the MP3. We all remember Steve Jobs coming out and saying, "What's this little pocket on our jeans for?" Well, I figured it out, and he held up his iPod Nano. Remember that? And you know, it fits right there. That was his marketing. And everybody was grabbing MP3s, which were CD quality. And they're putting it onto MP3s, and they would listen to their MP3 players. Little did we know that, you know, we'd get iPhones and never have an MP3 player again. But let's not also forget that by the year, 2005, 2006, retro anything was cool.
Yeah, it was cool again.
Yeah, and I mean, it's always kind of been that way in the 1990s with the 1960s. Yeah. Even the 1920s flapper look, which was also ubiquitous in the 1990s, though we forget that. We always remember like the grunge, what was it, trash chic look, but flannels and whatever. But, you know, it was always hearkening back, always going back. And people always go back to what there was. I think right now the major demographic buying vinyls again is what like between 18 to 24, and then anybody over 55. Yeah.
And about 33% of those sales to 18 to 24-year-olds are to women.
Really?
Right. So they're dominating.
Are they buying Tay-Tay?
I'm not sure.
I wouldn't be surprised. Or they're buying Paramore, who, by the way, is also amazing.
Probably Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and
Paramore.
Tay-Tay.
I would probably think Paramore. If you haven't heard them, you need to check them out.
Yeah, definitely have.
Yeah. The thing is that people are going back to that visceral moment.
Yeah. So there's this resurgence now, right?
Right.
And for the past 15, 20 years, you've seen, certainly 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
You've seen this resurgence, and again, demand is so high that the supply can't keep up.
Right.
We were saying earlier
and
that
vinyl is the number one, I believe it's still the number one medium to purchase music on.
I'm not sure, but I do know that
there's
music. As many sales now. There's in terms of the number of vinyl records sold, it's right there with the number of vinyl records sold in vinyl's heyday. Now, again, we have a much larger population from which to pull, but still,
but they are also downloading and streaming their music.
You've got a lot of options, and yet,
people are still buying records.
Yeah.
Part of it, though, is the hunt. I mean, what makes Josef Zahradnik and I really enjoy getting records, going back to Slovakia, right? It's the hunt.
Oh, it's trying to find
them. So, for example, I brought one here that was Miro Zbierka. In Zbierka, he just died. That one happens to be signed. Sezoni Lasky. It's the hunt for that album for me was just really, really hard to find. That one is straight from communism as well. I mean, that's from the Czechoslovak Communist Republic. You know, and some of the music is incredible. Most of the music on that one's incredible. I've got a bunch of records where, you know, it's the hunt trying to find it. That version of Closer was so hard to find, the clear version with that sleeve. Wow. I've got some Joy Division that is really hard to find. I've got an album on the way that's Warren Zevon that is a glow-in-the-dark record.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I found it. I was like, oh, okay, I've got to get that. It's Excitable Boy, which is like one
so
of my
admittedly,
favorite.
You know, when I use the internet to look up the top 2 or 3 reasons people give for wanting vinyl, I'm hearing nostalgia, which explains the 55 and year olders, but not necessarily the 18 to 24s. I'm hearing this sensorial full experience, this warm sort of fill up the room experience, which I can certainly attest to. But admittedly, I've never heard anyone say, Hey, the thrill of the hunt. That's interesting.
It's always the thrill of the hunt because the records are very hard to find sometimes.
Right.
I mean, you can go to Walmart and find, some
Something,
records
yeah.
all the time. Trying to think, Adele. That one's very ubiquitous at Walmart, right? Taylor Swift, very ubiquitous at Walmart.
But if you want a first run of, say, Madonna.
Right, that's going to be tricky. Or let's see, if you were looking for, say, let's go to metal, right? Then go Megadeth. Killing is my business.
Yeah.
And business is good. The very first album, without any of the censoring or the remaster. Yeah, that's a hard one to find. And you have to really hunt for that version.
So is there anywhere
The White Album. Oh my gosh. You can find the White Album anywhere, but to find one of the first runs, you have to hunt for it.
So where do you find these things? I mean, for our listeners that want to get into this, obviously they could start with a Walmart and grab some
of
these. But if they
yeah.
wanted to get into this hunt you're talking about and find something a little more esoteric, a little harder to find,
Okay,
are
so
there places they can go on the internet? Are there physical places they can go?
Yeah, you can hop on to certain things like Discogs, right?
eBay, Amazon.
Amazon. Amazon will at least let you know if something existed. eBay, you have a good chance of trying to find it. For example, right now, I am on the hunt for Saccharine Trust, Surviving You Always.
So Saccharine Trust, Surviving You Always. If anybody has a lead on that, put them on the couch at gmail.com.
That one has been hard to find.
Okay.
I do not have it on CD. I cannot find it on CD, but it was on vinyl, and I think it ran once.
Okay.
Right.
So any
it's one of
clubs?
those,
Any clubs online or physical, or any
I'm sure there
storefronts you
are
could go to still?
But okay, so your local storefronts, right? So in Wilmington, North Carolina, there's Gravity Records.
Nice.
There are a few others, but Gravity definitely is my favorite.
Okay.
Right?
Shout out to Gravity Records.
Yeah. Shout out to Matt Keane and Gravity Records and the boys down there and girls. Lately it's just been boys, but I don't know who they've hired. Since I got back from Europe, I need to go look. But yeah, Gravity Records is amazing.
Nice.
As far they're one of my go-tos. There is a place in Pittsburgh. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's on Squirrel Hill. Is it Jerry's? I'll have to look it up. But in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh, one of the largest record shops on the East Coast. We can edit that out, right? So
I just typed in Jerry's Records. Yeah,
Jerry's Records at Squirrel Hill. Yeah. It's one of the largest on the East Coast.
Yeah,
that's Pittsburgh.
got a couple others. The Exchange, Amazing Books and Records.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. There are so many. And Target, believe it or not, they get their run of specialized vinyl as well as Walmart.
And so how do you play these things, man? You get these things, you take them home. What are kids today going to play them on?
Well,
you got to buy an old Victrola, an old phonograph machine.
Would you believe turntable? That they have new turntables that are incredible, direct drive. The top line turntables today blow away anything that our parents
Not
had.
like this Victrola I've got in a suitcase in my office.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, I brought a cheap $50 when I bought it at one of our box stores a few years ago into the office. Haven't really used it ever. Opened it up, plugged it in, and I'm getting no power.
Whoops.
Made of complete plastic, right? But what do you think? I mean, what are you going to have? What are you going to get?
My wife got me a Victrola, and I can actually download my record straight to MP3 right onto a flash drive. So,
what's a good turntable cost you now?
A good one? Oh, you can go anywhere between 130 up.
Okay.
Up. I think there's one called Orbit where the things that they can do with these turntables, it's unreal.
Right.
Acrylic platters with sound dampeners on them, so there's no skip, there's no jumps. The anti-skate mechanisms on the arms, play through what normally would have been a skip, right?
Yeah.
The weighted arms. You even on these professional turntables, there's little dots on the side and a strobe light and you can tell your RPMs by looking at these dots and strobe.
So you can dial it in.
Yeah,
just
you
right.
can dial it in between two turntables and make sure, like while listening through your headphones, make sure that those beats are matching. Hold on, let me tap, and
So
here we
you
go.
can slow one of them down. Maybe that's at
Yeah, so if you're going at like 124 and the other one was at 120, you can slow one down by 4, and then you can line up the beat, and then you can make it match and just fade over.
That's how they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tougher to do digitally, man, unless
yeah.
you got a really nice software.
Right.
I don't, but I've tried to put some songs together digitally using some editing software I have, and it's not easy.
It's not easy,
but it won't let you dial in.
Yeah, you can dial in vinyl.
Nice.
But these turntables now are insane.
That's cool.
Absolutely insane.
Anywhere you can go, club, bar, where they play vinyl.
Here
here
in Wilmington, the Venus Flytrap has been having some vinyl nights.
Nice.
Again, through Gravity. Gravity's working with another bar now. I can't remember the name of it, but they also are trading up vinyl. Very often, if you go to places like Ibiza, I know that sounds a little crazy.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a local gay club.
Yeah, and they do some vinyl there.
They do some vinyl. I've seen some DJs
and
pull
not
out
just
vinyl.
the musical type, I understand.
Whoa. Yeah. Hey, those places are...
Vinyl's comfortable.
Hey, yeah. Those places, though, I mean, those types of clubs where they're pulling out vinyl, there's something special to it. Radio stations, many of them will actually play only vinyl today.
Really?
Yeah, like the rock stations. Like there's a local one here. I can't remember, and I think it's like WGNI. I'm not positive.
And they're doing all vinyl or a lot of vinyl?
A lot of vinyl at night.
Nice.
I always hear that they're playing it off the platter.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
A lot of people are turning to vinyl. It's just a warmer and deeper, fuller tone.
Right.
Again, it's how you have to master the music before you press it on the vinyl. It's a lot more raw than anything else, just because it has to be. You don't get the help of digital manipulation as much whenever your stereo is based on which side of the needle it's hitting.
Well, I will say this, growing up listening to vinyl, I remember the experience of going to Sky City stores, finding a piece of vinyl, taking it home, putting the needle on that record, and calling up friends and family members, right? Sitting around as if we're like, packed in my room for a seance, and all of us simultaneously hearing that drum beat or that guitar riff, right? All of us experiencing that sort of cacophony of this organic sensorial experience at the same time. And I wonder if anyone has ever done that with a CD or an MP3. I highly doubt it. I doubt that anyone's ever taken a MP3 and before they ever heard the song, called someone over and said, let's listen together. Right.
Well, I know that there are some people who do that, especially with certain styles, certain genres of music, right? But it doesn't happen nearly as often. Like I don't know if you remember the first time you heard Led Zeppelin 4, the very last song, When the Levee Breaks, and you hear that drum kick off, which was being recorded in a bathroom. Right. John Bonham was sitting there and he was hitting it so hard that there was like a double and triple tap on that you can barely hear, but it's still there on the bass drum. And you get that, which also becomes Ryman and Steelin for the Beastie Boys.
Sure.
But I'm sure that people were listening to that at one time and just going, oh my God, come here. You've got to hear this, cranking it. And that voluminous, that echoing sound,
that fullness,
full, just right through the soul.
And it's the opposite nowadays when you are in a studio that is completely soundproof and you're tweaking the vocals, particularly auto-tuning, usually up the register so that it's tinier and trebly. You just don't get that warm, full, like wrap around your body experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Ben, I'm really happy you came in today and shared some of your story and some of your love and passion for music.
It was a pleasure to be here.
And I'm going to go ahead and play this little ditty to take us out.
That's B.B. King singing, by the way.